An interesting fact from history. Did you know that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams both died on the same day, and that was July 4th, 1825, the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence? Another interesting fact, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Franklin, John Jay, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple others, all said that the biggest threat to the republic that they had created was the emergence of two political parties that convert every issue into some grand struggle between the two of them and pervert people into going away from their own self-interest and instead adhering to the interests of one of the two political parties. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? In the last 20 years or so, we have a new phenomenon on Earth called social media. And a lot of people are sort of blaming it for the downfall of civilization, or at least the downfall of civility. But there's a difference between social media and social media apps like Facebook and the app formerly known as Twitter, which is now X, and Meta, which is owned by Facebook. You know, social media is a term for a type of thing, and how it is used by multi-billion-dollar corporations is different than the thing itself. It is the profit motive that a private enterprise has, coupled with the viral ability and anonymity, I'm probably saying that wrong, but you know what I mean, of social media, coupled with the mutual interest of the two political parties dividing every issue into an existential struggle. All of those three things combined is what is leading to the downfall of civilization. It's not just one of those things. The motive is money, and the means is politics, and the machinery is the social media. And what we're kind of experiencing here is people as consumers, as I don't know what you would call something that gets harvested, but we provide the money and the personal information that these companies via social media abstract, runs through a computer, analyzes it, and then we get marketed to for a bunch of stuff that we don't really want, and the two parties benefit because they get their message out cheaply, and unfortunately though it has the side effect of making everyone sort of hate each other, and the country falling apart, and there being a mental health crisis. You know, social media could be used for grandma to share her knitting project with her grandchildren, you know. people complain about it, but you know, a lot of you scroll through Facebook or something, and there's what people ate for dinner. Here's an interesting anecdote. You know, when I was in college, back, let's say 2005, you had to have a college email address in order to sign up for Facebook. My girlfriend at the time went to Nassau Community College, and she couldn't even sign up because community college wasn't acceptable. You know, but I went to the big University of Albany, and that was acceptable. So I got on Facebook, and she was on MySpace. The original purpose of Facebook was to facilitate group projects at universities. I remember the first time I heard of it, I was in some undergraduate English class, and we had to do a group project, and we all got together, and one of the girls asked if we were on Facebook. I had no idea what that was. She explained it to me. It's funny to think about a world existing before Facebook. You know, I'm not that old, I'm 41, but I always say that sort of my generation, maybe even my particular birth year of 1984, is really on the cusp of, we had a childhood, an adolescence that was analog, and basically as we were becoming adults, so was the internet and the monetization of the internet, which came with the emergence of social media. I was in 9th grade when Columbine happened. It was over spring break, I believe, and boy, that changed everything. All of a sudden, everybody was petrified of everybody else in school. I was a senior in 9/11. That changed everything. It went from being sort of patriotism and pride being nothing. You know, this is a Seinfeld era of nihilism and stuff. To you couldn't even buy American flags. It was just sold out. Everybody just decked out in American flags. Yesterday was 9/11. When I went to, it's funny, you know, when I went to college freshman year, I didn't bring a computer, but I did bring a phonograph because I figured there's a computer lab for me to type up anything I might want to type up, but there's not going to be any phonograph lab for me to listen to the records that I grew up listening to. And this was right at the time that people were, you know, downloading, starting to be able to download music on Kazaa and LimeWire and Napster. But I didn't know how to do that. You could still hand in a paper senior year, handwritten in blue or black ink, because most people didn't have a computer at home. And that changed by the time I was done with school. You had to turn in everything typed. So that's kind of interesting. But then there's this phenomenon called channel drift. I remember, I used to love watching the History Channel. And, let's say when I'm in high school and college, when I was living at home. Get done with dinner around 7 o'clock. History's Mysteries with Arthur Kent would come on, or Modern Marvels. I'd watch a 2-hour special on the history of concrete. Whatever, it was always fascinating. And then years sort of went by, and I guess I didn't have a television in any of my apartments. And I went back to school, quit my job, became destitute, had to live home again. Started watching television again. I remember I was trying to watch the History Channel, because I wanted to watch history. And all it was Ice Road Truckers, Duck Dynasty, I don't know, Alaskan crab catching people. A lot of documentaries about blue collar workers doing stuff and arguing with each other. And I got mad and I Googled, like, what? The History Channel doesn't show history anymore. And it brought up a Wikipedia article on channel drift, which is the tendency of a profit-driven corporation to start out doing one thing, and then over time, it becomes a little bit more profitable to go over here, go over here, go over here, until they're not doing what they originally set out to do. I mean, MTV was the same thing, right? They did. I don't know. I haven't watched MTV in 20 years. But they used to show music. That was the thing. That's what the M in MTV, stood for. Same thing with Clear Channel Radio. There used to be all these independent radio stations. They all got bought up by Clear Channel. Somebody, they listened to a focus group, and that focus group says that, the most listened to thing is easy listening rock or whatever. And now every channel plays the same thing, Dancing Queen by ABBA, twice an hour, and there's no jazz. There's certainly no big band. There's no variety because everything's been filtered through a focus group for the profit motive. That kind of sucks. And the same thing happened with Facebook. They went from being a group targeted towards people in college to facilitate projects to a publicly traded company, and they realized that the value doesn't lay in facilitating people to work together. The value lays in getting people to stay watching a screen all day so that the company can charge advertising fees, and so that they can mine your personal information so that they can sell that information to other companies so that they can zoom in on you and try to market directly to you to sell you a bunch of crap that you don't need or want. Kind of like when you're standing in the line at the grocery store and there's candy bars and AAA batteries, and you might just impulsively buy something because you're bored and want to get out of the line. So you say, oh, I haven't had Tic Tacs in a while. Let me spend $3 on this. And then you bite into them and break your teeth, and remember they taste like junk. And that's why you haven't bought it in 15 years. So that's going on. And I just wanted to talk for a minute about what I learned in the last year about the algorithms that go into social media, because I had to research all this stuff, to make videos. I thought it would be a good idea to buy the YouTube code cracked, the SEO, search engine optimization functioning. I try to always, if I'm going to do something, try to read like 5 or 6 books on that subject, so I at least have some abstract idea of what I'm doing. And I think, in the process of learning that and now doing this project, I understand kind of why everything is designed now to make people afraid and to hate each other. So I got to pass a boat now. I'll talk about that in a moment. these social media companies want is to get you addicted. They want you to spend as much time interfacing with the screen as possible so that they can pitch ads to you and figure out what you like so that they can run that through AI and market stuff to you. Actually, it's kind of funny, AI is a lot better than it used to be. Excuse me. I remember maybe 2015, I was working at the legislature. We were working around the clock at the time. I think the budget was getting ready to pass. I was single. So, we're just there till, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was spending time on my computer playing Pyramid Solitaire and going on Match.com. And all of a sudden the ads started to come up on the right-hand side. Meet Egyptian women. Because I don't know, they were trying to put together what my interests were. So that was kind of funny. Nowadays, it's more like I just say something to a friend. Like, hey, do you know how, do you happen to have a machine to pump up the air in my, an air compressor so I can pump up the air in my tires? And then I just go online later that night and I have ads for air compressors. I guess they listen as well. Anyway, that's the whole point. They want people to pay attention, give your attention, be addicted, spend as much time on the screen as possible. And that's straight up just, they admit that. I mean, that's what it is, right? So for YouTube, in order to get paid by them for the ads that they're putting in my videos, I have to have 1,000 followers, like 3,000 hours of watched content, because that proves to them that I am keeping people coming back to watch more videos on YouTube. Doesn't matter to them if I'm putting out content that's making people like each other or making people hate each other. They are amoral, they're neutral. They just want they want growth, they have stockholders, and they just want people glued to the screen. So how do you get that? One thing is to have a face. You got to have a face on the screen. People are more interested in watching a video that has a face on it. That's the same with the news. They understand that. I was watching the some political debate this year with a friend. I said, geez, that guy's hair is ridiculous. And the person said, yeah, well, they're not necessarily supposed to look good. They just have to look interesting. That way people will talk about the person's hair rather than change the channel to go to some other channel. Same thing, that's why everybody's good looking in television, right? Even the goth weirdo in CSI, Miami Bones, whatever killer torture show that you watch in primetime TV. Even the weirdo is attractive in their own sort of way. If you're ugly, you just can't be on TV. You gotta go into radio. And hopefully somebody at Clear Channel. Anyhow, you gotta have a face. And it's funny, so when I put a video up, I can select a thumbnail, and that's the thing that's the little picture, that you click on to see if you're interested in the video, or it's got to get you interested, right? So there's a whole art to making that thumbnail attractive so that you'll click on that video and start to watch, right? And one of the things is a face. So if you don't do it, it's very easy to forget to put that thumbnail up, but if you don't do it, the computer will do it for you. It'll look at your video, somehow figure out where there's a face that's smiling, and it'll select that as the thumbnail. In the update video I did from Tonawanda on the pluses and minuses of taking the boat out. It's like a 20-minute video about it. At one point, a guy was going by on a bicycle, and he rang his bell because there was some other weirdo there. I don't know, put a DVD on my table. I don't know what the heck he was doing. But me and these two other people ended up being in the frame at the same time, and boom, computer picked that out and put that up as a thumbnail. 3 faces. Isn't that interesting? And faces are, just fundamentally interesting, I mean, took a child psychology course, and as an infant, one of the first, if not the first, visual stimuli that you and you and you and you and me respond to is a face. Even something that looks like a face drawn on a paper plate, 2 buttons and a banana. And, they study this, they can tell what the infant, who is obviously non-verbally communicating, is interested based on how long they look at the object. And, the face is the thing that they look at the longest. So that's kind of interesting to think about. Before you were capable of consciously thinking, you were responding to other faces. So you gotta have a face. When I go in, I've seen most of my media or news or whatever from bars. I go in, I'd say 80% of the bars I go into have a TV, which is very annoying. And I'd say of those 80%, I would say 65% have Fox News on. But I can't hear what they're saying because usually there's music. And I got to assume that a lot of people are getting their news at a bar the way I am, because you're there by yourself and looking at a screen. That's what we do now. And, so the faces, in addition to whatever's scrolling along the bottom, whatever recent bombing or what's going on, it's the faces that are telling you, cueing you what your emotional response is supposed to be. Right? So, nobody's Walter Cronkite anymore. Nobody's talking in a monotone, conveying information in an objective manner. No, what we have now is the personality. We've got characters, right? There's a divorce between reality and reality television and facts and all that stuff. So we have our news anchors, but they're characters, and they're, it's not just about the information that they're conveying. It's about, I agree with that character. Kind of like how, you used to listen to a song because you liked the song, but nowadays you listen to a song because you like the artist. It's the same thing. Let me tune in because I agree with this person's, perspective. And a lot of it is in their facial expression. For instance, let's say I'm watching Fox News and something comes up about a Democrat or a liberal, whatever. You get a lot of this facial expression. Whatever. That way if you're watching it in silence, that whatever that person that they're talking about did is dumb and foolish. There's a lot of it. Or there's also the, anger. You gotta have emotion now. You're not conveying information. What you're doing is triggering an emotional response in the viewer. And how do you do that? Subliminally. Well, geez, we evolved over 100,000 years, millions of years, whatever, to mimic what other people are doing. There's been a lot of talk recently about and by recently I mean like in the last day, about like whether empathy is even like a real thing, which blows my mind. Of course it's a real thing. When you see somebody else coming towards you and they look like this, you have an emotional response, which is, gee, I gotta have fight or flight. If they come towards you like this, then you have an emotional response. Your emotional state changes based on what the emotional state of the other person is. And salesmen or salespeople understand that. Actors understand that. Reality show people understand that. Politicians understand that. And they consciously control their face in order to cue you into the emotional state that you're supposed to feel. Okay, now I got a lift bridge I gotta go under. So, you gotta have a face. If you're a good-looking woman, you can do anything really, and sell it. There's a whole genre or whatever, I don't know what you would call it, but I mean, of just like scantily clad women mopping the floor or whatever, because people will watch that. And then you gotta, just normal people might watch just, like the faces because they're interested in what's going on. But the other thing that gets people addicted is anger. If you can get people angry, then you can get them to keep watching. Because they're angry, they want to know more. Especially if you can divide how they feel from the rest of the world. If you can make people feel that things are going in a bad direction and that it's caused by other people, then they're going to be mad at other people. They're going to have this cognitive dissonance, asking themselves why they feel mad. They want to justify it, and then they're going to seek out information on the screen that confirms that they're right and everybody else is wrong. The parties know that, and the social media knows that. So then when something happens, the best thing that you can do if you're a social media person is to dig into that anger that people feel and turn it into an issue between two different parties. So somebody stubs their toe, and immediately the two parties and the social media people turn it into, well, they wouldn't have stubbed their toe if the other party had done their job. Well, the other party, their I can't even say it. Stubbing toe rates have gone through the roof since the other party did X, Y, and Z. X is funny. That word, that's what Twitter, it used to be called Twitter, now it's called X. And Facebook and Instagram, which are both owned by the same company, are called Meta. Why do they choose these kind of scary futuristic names? X. That's just, I don't like that. That's weird. Meta. We're involved in everything. You can't escape us. We're beyond physical reality. Oh yeah, that's what I want. Not to go off on a tangent here, but I was really afraid earlier this year. I got, two different friends of mine sent me video or advertisement or whatever about how Elon Musk's company's coming out with these realistic robots. They walk and move and everything like a human, except they just have a blank face. And, it'll be like $30,000, and they can do everything from, make a cocktail for you when you get home from work to babysit your children. Supposedly, I mean, that was what was in the advertisement. I'm not making that up. Go Google it. It's called Optimus. Optimus. You really? I mean, come on, like Optimus Prime, you know, like the robots from another planet that take over. I mean, I just don't understand the marketing there. But I had to say to my friends, I'm like, why would you possibly want this? I feel like the first time I see an Optimus robot walking down the street, if I'm in a vehicle, I'm going to run it over, and hopefully everybody does the same thing. I don't want robots, anthropomorphic robots walking around. Geez, I mean, we complain about people from other countries taking our jobs, but we're gonna have anthropomorphic robots? They're not gonna take your job? Okay. Sorry, that's a bit of a tangent here, but get rid of the anthropomorphic robots. I don't want anthropomorphic police officers. I don't want anthropomorphic babysitters for kids. It's bad enough that people have a flat affect now. You know? There's like below like 30 years old, half the time you see a bartender or somebody working and you say, hey, how's it going? And they go, good. Because they've never interacted with other people. They don't know, right? And then they don't have that empathy. So that's kind of scary. Anyway, the point being, there's a lot of talk about whether social media is to blame for this divisiveness that's going on in the country, or it's the two-party system, or it's capitalism itself. I think it's kind of all of those things. I don't think social media by itself is bad. I don't think capitalism by itself is bad. And I don't think the two-party system is necessarily bad. But what you've got is a total lack of morality in any of it. Nobody's got a moral imperative anymore because, well, we got to do what we got to do to satisfy our stockholders. What are we supposed to do? Lose money? Well, the other party is being immoral. If we're going to survive, we've got to be immoral too. And that's all going on constantly, and we're constantly exposed to it. You can't escape it unless you do something like what I'm doing, where you physically isolate yourself so that you see rocks and trees and get out of society. I mean, so that's like the choice. You can either just absent yourself from society, or you can just be constantly exploited and made angry on a minute-by-minute basis. That's the choice. Boy, that really stinks. For me personally, you know, I mean, that's why I wanted to do this trip. I do these kind of trips now over the last 20 years, end up being alone for a long time. And I never know what it is that I'm going to learn, but I know I'm going to learn something. A lot of times it's the same thing, and I learned it before and then forgot about it. You know, I want to tell you something. In 2018, you know, I built a boat out of a bunch of other boats. I called it Float of the Phoenix, you get it? And shipped it out to Pittsburgh. And right when we were building it on the ramp, and a hurricane came through, or the remains of a hurricane, and they flooded the entire Ohio River Valley, 15 feet. All the other boats got off the river except for the barges. We were the only recreational vessel, you know, on, but, you know, we're like driving over parks, so there's barbecues sticking up and stuff. And the current was so strong, we made a mistake. I went on one, there was an island and it was a lock, and it was going to be the first lock that I went through on this boat. And I said to my friend Sam, who was with me, I said, let's go on the other side of this island for the night, and we'll anchor for the night. And then we won't be hit by the barge traffic wakes all night long, And in the morning, we'll come back east and then go down through the lock. Couldn't go south all around the island because there was a dam. Well, we got stuck there for 2 weeks because the motor was a piece of junk. The boat was a piece of junk. It was floating on barrels. No hydrodynamicness, to it. It was a displacement hull, barge, basically. And we could not go back against the current that quarter mile to get around the tip of the island in order to go back down from, through the lock. So we're there for 2 weeks. My friend celebrated his 30th birthday like that. We had to go into town. The only way we could do it, we'd have to walk all along the shore up to our stomachs, like a mile, until there was a spot where you could get to some railroad tracks and follow the railroad tracks, and then we were in the middle of a factory town. And you had to go through the factory town a mile or so until there was a convenience store. But I guess in Pennsylvania you can't buy beer at the convenience store, so you got to go to the bar. And the only bar was the factory bar, which was made out of cement blocks with no windows. And they would sell us a 6-pack. So we'd go there and have as much as we could afford to drink, and then take the 6-pack and some sandwiches back with us and walk another, mile and miles and miles back to the boat and wade. Got to be kind of boring, and I was pulling my hair out. I'm just kidding. That's an expression. I didn't have enough hair to pull. But I was getting real stressed, and I said, this stinks, I want to get moving. And then it occurred to me, this is something I've been planning for the last 18, at that point, it was 14, 15 years, was just going down the river and spending all day not doing anything. And I had that realization, and time itself, my perception of time slowed down, so that I would estimate that what used to feel like a minute passing felt like 3 minutes. It was a really interesting phenomenon. And that continued like that. Something would happen, and it was as though I had 3 times as much time to respond to what was happening. That was great. That it lasted like that until I got back and had to go back to work, and then it reverted. So that was like a lesson that I learned on that trip, is that you can control your sort of perception of time, but not when you're being stimulated by the rest of society, which is constantly demanding your attention so that they can sell you crap, including whatever message they're trying to sell you or person they're trying to sell you. So on this trip, I knew I was gonna kind of like learn stuff, come to realizations, and I was really hoping that my perception of time was gonna slow down again. And it took, I would say, 3 weeks. It's not instantaneous. You can't just unplug and go for a walk in nature. It takes time to decompress. You have to go slow. When you go slow, it forces you to deal with this sort of momentum that affects your mind, where we're constantly, there's like a premium on multitasking. If you could just try and do as much stuff as possible, try and do as much stuff as possible. Come on, think. That's not healthy. That's really not healthy. It makes you vulnerable to the messaging. So I was really, but it took me about like 3 weeks, and then finally it clicked for me. It's okay to go slow. What I'm doing is fine. I'm not going to get in trouble because I'm going slowly. And that's good. It's even okay for me to talk a little slowly, right? It's okay for me to stop and meet somebody. It's okay for me to interact with a duck. Hey buddy, how you doing? See if he can swim up to me or not. when I'm not looking forward to this part of going back to society. I need to do it because the boat, I just logically, I know that I can't get to New Orleans. I don't have enough time and money. And I will next year. So the right thing to do is to come out and go back to work. But I gotta say, I am not looking forward to the deleterious effect that being in society is going to have on my mood and my cognitive functioning. And I got another boat coming. Last Thursday I was in Brockport and they had karaoke at the Red Jug, which I knew was a college bar because an ex-girlfriend of mine used to live in Portland and they got a Red Jug there. So I knew what to expect, and they had karaoke. Everybody was, I did the first karaoke song, I did That's Life. People loved it, it kind of set the mood. I played pool with people, even though there's an age difference between me and, 21-year-old that I was playing with. Everybody was having a good time. Yesterday, I ended up being in Brockport again, so I was like, oh great, I'll go to Red Jug. But they didn't have karaoke, and instead they had just this, I don't even know what you would call it, hip-hop, degrading music that's got sort of no aesthetic value to it. And everybody was just sitting there like, meh. And I was thinking to myself, why is this music playing? It's just because because that's what you play at a college, right? So the 21-year-old bartenders there are, just playing what they think people want to hear. And I was thinking about this, even though it's not really what people want to hear. And I was thinking about this TV producer in the 70s, I forgot who it was talking about the garbage television that they were putting out. And apparently at a board meeting, they came to some kind of existential realization, and they said, is this what people want, or is this just what we're giving them? So, I remembered that, and I went to I put some money in the Touch Tunes there, and I played a couple different, like funk songs, jazz. I think the first song I played was Do You Know What It Means to Miss New Orleans? And everybody's mood changed. People were tapping their hands, people got up to play pool. I started talking to people, people were smiling. Because they were given something pleasant, something conducive to conversation. So think about that, okay? When you're watching TV, when you're watching your 5th crime drama show, and you're thinking that everybody's getting killed 5 times a day in the city that you live in. No, it's just because you're watching that all the time. When you're watching the news and everything is bad on the news, and you're thinking that everybody hates each other in the world and can't even have a conversation anymore. No, that's because that's what you're being given on the news. If you leave the house and you go to talk to people, they're fundamentally nice. Be extremely skeptical about negativity that you hear, because people are using it to manipulate you into hating everybody else so that you'll stay on your screen and they can mine your information. Okay? When you see a news anchor and they're all mad, be extremely skeptical of them. Be aware of projection, which is when people put onto the world what they're feeling. Watch happy stuff. Get out of the house. Turn off the screen. If we all do that, then our perception of the country is going to be a lot better. Our perception of strangers is going to be a lot better. The cost of doing business, of being in a society, is going to go down. You'll save money by not buying crap that you don't need, going into debt and getting charged interest rates, and you'll just feel better. And isn't that the point of life? When somebody goes around and make a career out of getting you mad and upset, whether they're a talk show host or a talking head or they have a podcast, but they're not that's all they do is just sow hatred so that they can get listeners that way. Don't listen to them. You have a family, you have friends, you know people. When you meet people, 99% of them are usually good and fun. How many people do you know were murdered? If you know somebody that was murdered or died, what percentage of the people you know does that constitute? You know, people walk around like everybody's out to get them, and everybody's stealing from them, and everybody's trying to murder them. It's not like that. That's just not reality. It's what you're being sold and packaged. And why? So that you can hate other people. What kind of deal is that? Get rid of it.